I do vlogs.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, welcome to the first ever Moral Performance Strength and Conditioning Roundtable, where we're talking training for ultimate from A to Z. We've got some great guests here today, and we're going to have a great conversation. So let's start by going around, and how about you guys all just tell us why you're involved in strength and conditioning and kind of your current position at this point. Start with Chris.
Chris Wykus. I am a strength and conditioning coach both for New York University in New York City, New York. Division II, Division III athletes working in collegiate strength and conditioning. I also work at a facility in Manhattan called Drive 495, which mainly trains golfers, some professional athletes, some celebrities.
And that's where Connor and Charlie
Yes.
Weingroff
And
work out
I
of.
work with physical therapist Connor Ryan and Charlie Weingroff, who is pretty world-renowned strength and conditioning coach and physical therapist. I've also been the strength and conditioning coach for Denver's Johnny Bravo for the last 3 or 4 years. And I have trained University of Colorado Mama Bird. I currently train the Columbia High School Ultimate team out of New Jersey, which is the school that Ultimate was actually founded.
You just mentioned Mama Bird and Johnny Bravo. Either of those teams have a championship run past couple years?
So most recently,
Humility.
Mama Bird was national champions. I wasn't working with them particularly this last season, but they're still using the system that I implemented years ago. I trained many of the athletes that are currently on the team or were on the team. And Denver's Johnny Bravo just won a national championship last year.
And I'm still friends with you, even though
Yes.
it was Boston Ironside.
We beat your boys.
My Boston boys that Chris took it to. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Very good. AJ.
AJ Jakoski. I am a strength coach for Moral Performance, certified functional strength coach from Mike Will's Strength and Conditioning in Boston. I am the head strength coach for the DC Breeze professional ultimate team in the AUDL, and also captain of Assateague Beach Patrol and run physical training for the lifeguard patrol.
And you're here. We haven't mentioned, we are filming live on location in Boracay, which is the home of the world famous Kings of the Beach, the Boracay Dragons. And AJ is doing what with the Dragons?
Here training for Beach World Championships held in March in Dubai. It is February 3rd, so we're about 6 weeks out from the tournament.
And we're going to talk a lot about that towards the end of this show. Nick
Simonelli. I am a CSCS and just recently MED from the University of Minnesota. I am a strength and conditioning coach out of the Powerhouse, which is in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I do some work with the men's university club team Grey Duck. So that's my background.
And you've done some pretty prestigious internships.
Athletes of Performance, now known as Team Exos.
Athletes Performance, one of the premier strength and conditioning facilities in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You've also worked with the guy who wrote this book, Triphasic Training. Who's that?
Cal Dietz, Ben Peterson, great guys. University of Minnesota as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Slump?
My name is Mark Huber, and I'm the strength and conditioning coach for the Austrian national teams. And I'm also here to train with the Dragons and have my little influence in the whole adventure of training for Worlds.
And today is your special day. It's your birthday. Do we want to tell the fans your age?
Today is my birthday, actually,
47.
and it's the first day of my master's era. So I'm turning 33 today.
Good. Well, so stoked to have you guys here. This episode brought to you by Moral Performance, Boone Technical Clothing, doing great work in the Philippines. Also just got the sponsorship with the AUDL, so we're going to be seeing a lot more of Boone in the U.S. And of course, the brand new product out of Moral Performance, MPFPT. So let's give a little bit of, we're on this island, Boracay, and we're here, and for the past 2 weeks, most of us have been literally training full time. Wake up, eat, train, sleep, train again, and then we play at a tournament, the Boracay Open, with our collective team known as Humiliswag. So in order for us to be this involved in strength and conditioning, that we would come to an island and spend a lot of valuable time training, what is it about the world of strength and conditioning, the kind of chasing that peak performance? I guess what I want to hear is, how did you get in to strength and conditioning to the extent that you would kind of make these kind of life changes? So how did you enter the strength and conditioning world?
I had a lot of interest coming up in kinesiology and physiology, and I really wanted to take the route of becoming a physical therapist. Once I realized after volunteering in physical therapy, that it was mostly older geriatric populations and non-compliant patients, I decided that I would rather work with an athletic population that would listen to what I had to tell them.
That's a big point for anybody that wants to be a strength and conditioning coach, or because a lot of people are like, hey, I want to learn anatomy, I'm going to become a physical therapist. And what they do in PT school, most schools, is they prepare you to work with a 6-year-old that just hurt their knee, and now that we need to get them back so they can walk around their kitchen again.
Sure, and it's, if you want to work with athletes, it is one of the ways. There are plenty of physical therapists, don't get me wrong, that work with athletic populations, but those jobs are few and far between. If you really want to work with athletes and have your hands on athletes and almost do, because I also had an interest in research and having these athletes and giving them different types of training to do is its own type of research. You work on the front lines of research, so you try to implement a program and you see what sort of results you can get from that program. It's very scientific and dependent upon your approach.
Cool. Sage?
I got into strength and conditioning, I guess, just because I play Ultimate, and I met you in college long ago when you originally decided to get a bachelor's degree in exercise science. And I was always a good enough Ultimate player because I was tall, but once I started actually getting in shape and getting stronger, then I was like, oh, this is a lot more fun now. I can play better. I can win games.
It's fun to sky people. It's fun to
it's
run
fun.
faster than everybody. Why wouldn't we devote our lives to it?
Yeah,
you know?
and just like the free nature of Ultimate, if you can run faster and jump higher, you play better Ultimate. You can cover more ground physically. So I really got into it purely from a player's perspective, started just training on my own. And then, as Moral Performance grew and grew, I kind of realized that I have a really good understanding of this training and I should help people. Like, I want to help people move better. I see people on the field moving poorly, like playing on top of injuries, not rehabbing themselves, not preparing their bodies before games. So I don't know, I almost feel like an obligation to help people, but
a lot of those people are your teammates.
Help my teammates, help us win, and it's been a great journey. I never really saw myself as much of a coach. I've always seen myself as a player, but I've just gotten a lot more comfortable.
It just happens.
It just happened, yeah.
Perfect.
So my process was super similar to Chris's, where I was definitely pursuing physical therapy, and then after a long summer of shadowing, I quickly found out I wanted to be more on the performance end of the industry. So my education shifted towards strength and conditioning, and it's been a good road ever since.
Yeah, I guess one of the other things about that, the physical therapy realm is more of a reactive type of thing. So if something bad happens and you break yourself or you tear something, then you go and you do physical therapy. On our end, it's more of like a proactive approach where we're helping people get into a position in which they'll be more resilient to injuries and they can come back faster, or they don't even get themselves in those positions.
And that's why Charlie named his product Rehab equals Training,
Sure.
Training equals Rehab. It's all the same thing.
It's
And with
big,
physical therapy,
circuitous loop.
it's billable, so they have to follow guidelines, and they are saying, hey, we're doing rehab today. And you might have a person that's ready to actually train, but they have to follow these guidelines, so they're still doing mellow little things, which if that physical therapist also had experience in strength and conditioning, they could blend the two, and that would be much better for the client. That's why I've seen a lot of these people that are really have an influence in strength and conditioning, like Dr. Kelly Starrett. He started off as a physical therapist, got that rehab knowledge, and then opened a gym and has trained thousands of athletes in his gym, and he's blending the two because rehab really is the same thing as training.
I've also heard the phrase before, prehab versus rehab. Prehab is just like preparing yourself to be stronger, be more resilient, better range of motion, better flexibility, versus rehab is just reacting to an already existing problem. Prehab, we want to just be, like you said, more proactive. Preventative, yeah.
That's get in good positions and then train in good positions. And this is one problem we see with the Ultimate community that we'll get into as soon as Slumps gives us kind of how you got obsessed with strength and conditioning.
My approach is similar to AJ's, that I'm like an athlete for all my life in different sports. And as soon as I got into the Ultimate scene, I realized that it's a lot of Frisbee players are not ready yet. They're not ready to be athletes. They're not ready to be like real training 5 times a week. So coming from different sports, I saw like all these, especially team members of mine, being like all motivated but not ready for that. So I had like a similar approach as AJ, trying to help teammates, trying to help like people around me. And I got more and more into that topic. And when I got to know Tim, he like introduced me to like the vision of training people, of being a strength and conditioning coach. And yeah, since then I've been obsessed with training myself and get education to like train other people. And since last year, the national teams that I coach, the athletes, being the best Frisbee players in Austria, but they're not ready to be like real 100% athletes. But yeah, my goal is to make them ready, and before they get injured, to make them like have enough injury prevention to be actually ready to play a whole season of Ultimate, and not be like play 3 months, rehab 2 months, and then play again 3 months, and then it's like a cycle of getting injured, rehabbing, getting sick, injured, rehabbing. So being more on the other side of the spectrum.
So let's start the conversation there. We've got this Ultimate sport that's growing. People are realizing that it's an asymmetrical sport and increases your chances of injury. People also realizing that if I train, then I'm going to make more plays, I'm going to make higher level teams, I'm going to be less injured. So now we've got all these people saying, hey, I want to understand more about training. And we're guys that are, going after certifications, reading all these different books, like trying to piece it all together for the Ultimate community. But there's a lot of different things out there. There's sometimes athletes may get a little bit overwhelmed. They're like, well, Kelly Johnson's doing CrossFit and she's playing Seattle Riot, and then this other person, Goose, is doing like strictly functional performance training. And then I hear my bodybuilder friend at the gyms tell me I should do bicep curls. There's just so many things that, that people are hearing. So for an untrained athlete, meaning that they have no experience in resistance training, where do they start?
I think realizing right away, like take a step back from the sport of Ultimate. Functional performance training is about body movement mechanics. So it doesn't matter what you're doing. We focus on body movement mechanics. So we have 4-way hip static stretching to open up the hips. And that in turn will help your crossover foot progressions in the agility module. So we become so obsessed with Ultimate, we want to think, how is this going to help my Ultimate? How is this going to help my Ultimate? Just think about your own body and how is this going to help my body movement? Once your body moves better, then you go back onto the Ultimate field and you're going to play better. But I think you just have to realize first to take care of your own body and start thinking about how you move and flexibility in areas where you could increase flexibility or mobility.
And there's a time to do that. Like that, there's, obviously we're working on that year round, but that's why the off season is so important for Ultimate players. Because that's the time to really correct your body, because we've said it a number of times, but Ultimate players have to realize it. Ultimate is an asymmetrical sport. So Chris, can you comment on some of the issues with efficient movement due to the one-sided nature of Ultimate?
Well, in terms of how the human body is going to present with some specific twists and torsions just from normal day-to-day living, because we have a very asymmetrical organ structure.
I brush my teeth with my right hand.
Sure, we live
always.
in a very right-handed, right-sided dominated society. Every doorknob is going to be positioned for someone with a right hand. most things that are put above us are going to be positioned for right hand. So we're already twisted in one direction, and then adding more pivoting, especially to the right, because almost all defenses are going to force forehand at most levels, until the higher levels when it will depend upon strategies, and it will depend upon like the different defensive sets and where the wind is. But you always be pushed onto your right side, which is usually going to become an issue in terms of overuse and pattern overload. So if you use one side of muscles over and over and over again, you're eventually going to become to a point in which you have an overuse type of injury. That's part of the reason why people will pull their hamstrings most often on the right side, because of all of the amount of use they're getting on that side. They're not able to use their hip properly for extension, so they're using their hamstring for extension and also using their hamstring to do everything else. So it's just getting in these aberrant positions and asking your muscles to do double duty will always end up with some sort of injury.
Right. So when you're playing Ultimate, you can't get around it. You're going out and you're adding asymmetry to your body.
Yeah.
Right. So every time I throw a backhand, I rotate a lot here. I don't rotate my spine much with a forehand. The big one that we've been seeing is what? At the hip?
At the right hip, for right-handed throwers. I don't know have you guys seen this, but a lot of friends and people that I play with have right side groin injuries because they're right-handed throwers. When we step out and open up that hip, we're opening up when we step out and externally rotate for balance, we're opening up this side of the hip, and that just becomes a bias. So the body does that on its own without you even thinking.
Well, to go off what I was saying, if you're always pushed to your right hip, if I'm always on my right leg, then I'm in internal rotation on my right hip, and I'm actually loading this adductor that AJ's talking about almost constantly. So if I'm standing like this, my adductors are on right now. So like I was saying, to kind of take off what I was saying earlier, it's just overuse of that adductor, those groin muscles on that right side. And if you keep going to the well over and over again, eventually something's going to explode.
Yeah.
Something's going to break.
And we're seeing a lot of adductor injuries in Ultimate. It's just like, so that if that toe is always out to the side, in Ultimate is extension. Like sports are extension of the hips. Every time you sprint, you're extending your hips. Every time you jump for a sky, every time you lay out, you're extending your hips. So naturally, the more Ultimate you play, the better your hip extension is going to be. But if every time you're extending your hip, your toe's way out to the side, then there's nothing else for this adductor to do but get strained, So this episode is also brought to you by coffee, which I'm going to have less of now.
And I think you love to say this, when you add repetition on top of dysfunction, you're gonna lead to some type of overuse injury. So correcting those fundamental movement practices and just symmetry in general is key.
Yeah, and Ultimate players tend to gravitate towards something they're really good at, and they want to just do more of that. And it's like you're adding so much volume on top of dysfunction. You've got to think about the basics of human movement. And that's why we're thinking about this. It's like we've got sports skill training. It's very important. That's why I go to Ultimate practice. But then we've got functional performance training. And in the middle is your peak potential. So much of the Ultimate population understands SST, but they have no understanding of FPT. And we're just saying, hey, you should have your toes forward in your athletic position, in your kettlebell swing. We need to be doing a little bit more one leg stuff to balance out. We know that this right hip is overbalanced, so let's do a little bit more on the left. Just these different little tricks so that we can make our training specific to Ultimate. So a big piece of functional performance training, module number 7, is strength and power development. And this is a big kind of strength of yours, Nick. Can you just talk about the necessity for resistance training in order to develop your Ultimate game? Why is it critical, and how has it helped you?
Right. So one of the basic theories in all of strength and conditioning is just applying overload. So once we achieve those good movement patterns, like a squat, a hinge, push, pull, split, anything, then we can add stimulus to the body, stress the system, and get adaptation. If I'm able to load a good squat pattern with a barbell, for example, or a kettlebell, what have you, now I can have increased muscle growth, increased power outputs, ground reaction force, whatever you're training, and lead to improved performance on the field. And as soon as people feel themselves jump a little higher, run a little farther, push a little harder, I think you get hooked. And,
Yeah.
And really, that's what like the bug is for me, is like that kind of feeling and chasing that.
And the simplest explanation we could possibly give for strength training is that you develop the capacity to produce more force, and then every time your foot hits the ground and you sprint, you put more force into the ground. You're getting more force, means you're propelled further forward, you run faster, you jump higher.
You also increase your ability to decelerate, which is one of the biggest things that will set apart one athlete from the other. It's not necessarily who can produce the most force, which is important. It's one of the most important parts. It's who can slow down the best, who can decelerate the quickest. Because the first part of jumping is going to be a deceleration or an eccentric muscular action. So if I'm slowing down and then exploding out of it, that's paramount. That's like top of the list of things you want to get from resistance.
Okay, so now let's look at the programming for CrossFit. Almost all Olympic lifts, box step-ups, there is almost no deceleration-based training. Yeah. They're going to do a box jump. They're going to do a box step-up. They're going to do a high volume of Olympic lifts, snatches, clean and jerks, deadlifts. Everything I just said is a concentric-based muscle action. Right. And then ultimate players wonder why we have so many ACLs. And ACLs, the majority of injuries happen when you're decelerating on a single leg. So if training equals rehab and rehab equals training, if I tear my ACL, then I'm going to go to the physical therapist and they're going to say, we're doing single leg force absorption, eccentric tolerance exercises. Now, why weren't we doing that before we tore our ACL when we know that we're going to be decelerating on a single leg? Therefore, a ton of our training needs to be unilateral and force absorption based. And you look at powerlifting, CrossFit, some of these other things that people are doing, and they're just doing all the concentric. So let's think about where should people start in strength training? Like if we just had to make it as simple as possible, couple exercises critical, where do people start?
I think in terms of, if we want to say like our mantra is like move well and then move often, like train quality, get movement quality before trying to put movement capacity. So you're starting with your fundamental movement patterns, which like Nick kind of got into a little bit earlier, is squatting, hinging, pushing and pulling. That's pretty much the basics of it. Being able to lunge, being able to stand in a single leg stance. These are all very fundamental patterns of movement. After you can nail those without any sort of pain or gross asymmetry, then I think you start by loading body weight patterning, being able to, do a push-up, being able to do a split squat hold, being able to do a body weight, step up or a body weight squat, starting to pattern pulling motions, inverted rows, chin-ups, pull-ups, things like that. And then using the ideas of triphasic training, starting with isometric holds, which are usually a lot easier to do, and really develop those end ranges of motion, which are important for doing these movements. And then starting to program in very slow tempo type training where you're using like a 3 second lowering portion, a hold at the bottom, and then exploding up. So training all of these aspects of muscular action, the eccentric lowering portion, the isometric holding and absorption at the end range portion, and then that explosive concentric motion, which is almost always the focus of training. And people get too far towards one end of that spectrum.
Right.
I think people get impatient and they want to go right to the sexy stuff. Yeah. They want to do barbell training, they want to do heavy kettlebells, but I really think body weight is definitely fundamental, and it's very underestimated. Like, people don't realize you can do a workout with no weight, and you can roast yourself if you want. And especially if you're not training, you don't have a high training age yet. So people ask me, where do I start? I say split squat, the squat, and SLDO. Like, if you can do those three things comfortably body weight, that's not any pushing or pulling, but those are just three basic ones that I always highlight. I like to get people doing those comfortably. And also, if you feel comfortable on them, do them enough times where you actually get a workout from doing them, just with body weight. Yeah. Then you have to be craving more weight to be able to be given more weight. We can't throw it right on you right away. It's not safe. So those basic patterns, body weight is the perfect place to start.
Definitely agree. I can't tell you how many times we'll get a new client or athlete and they just want to say like, oh yeah, I can back squat like 300 pounds. Let's go right to it. But more often than not, no weight at all, body weight. We got problem areas to look after. There's a lot of work to be done from the ground up. And then you can progress once you put your spine in a good position for loading to resistance. So always from square one.
I mean, one thing you were mentioning, that one thing I usually miss with athletes is how can you like do a one-legged exercise if you can't stand on one leg? If you don't have the core and you don't have the control over your body, and you need that stability on one leg, you need the stability on both legs to be like in any body position. I mean, if you stand up straight, it's obviously you can stand, but put someone in a deep squat, they most likely gonna fall over to any direction. Put someone through like a squat pattern to like split squats or deep squats or like lunges. Most athletes are like falling over or struggling, waving with their arms. So like one thing I really try to focus in the beginning is like have stability and have like the ability to put like your body weight, and as soon as you get weight, through your center of gravity. It's like if any force you put on your body is outside of your center of gravity, it's always gonna be like bad to your spine, bad for your hips, bad for your knee. So any force you put on the body, it has to be translated from your like ligaments through your body, through the center of gravity. It's like really important to have that portion of training where you're able to like concentrate all forces in your center of gravity.
And everything's controlled.
Yeah.
Controlled.
So we're starting. So to put all together everything we just said, we're starting with a basis of mobility first, so being able to move well, and then we're building up to, after we can move well through all these patterns, adding some sort of functional stability in these patterns, and we're working from both the ground up and from the inside proximally out to the extremities. So I want to have this strong center, this center of gravity you're talking about. I want to have this base of support that starts here and then goes out to my extremity. So that's going to start with being able to control, having this awareness to control your body through space, and not necessarily just loading into a back squat or putting heavy dumbbells in somebody's hand and saying, all right, well, walking lunge is a good exercise, so let's just do that. We need to qualify for all of these movements first. Like Slump was saying, if I don't have someone that can hold one leg up and stand on one leg for 10 seconds, it would be irresponsible for me to give them dumbbells and have them do step-ups, because that is basically a loaded version of a single leg stance. So qualify first for these movements, move well, and then, like I said, move off and add some capacity to your training.
So is there a way that we can assess whether or not people move well and we can load them?
Well, the way that I do it, and the way that we do it at Drive 485, is by using functional movement systems. The FMS is a movement screen that is comprised of 7 different movements. There's an overhead squat, an inline lunging position, which is more of a stepping type of pattern, a single leg stance position where you step over a hurdle, a pushing position, or like a crawling type of pattern, which is trunk stability push-up, and 2 rotary stability, which is very much reciprocal motion, so running, walking, gait. And then there's 2 fundamental mobility screens, which are shoulder mobility, so upper quarter mobility, and active straight leg raise, which is a lower quarter mobility screen.
So 7 tests. You either get a 0 if there's pain,
Yes.
a 1 if it's not so good, a 2 if it's
2 if it's average, normal.
average, and a 3 if it's like, wow, that's a perfect
Crushed it, yeah.
deep squat. So 7 times 3, 21. So there's some people like Slump. The first time I did an FMS, your score was 20 out of 21. That tells me this athlete is ready to train. Like, we can put load on this guy. He's got these requisite patterns. But then I might have somebody that comes in and they're all fired up to train, but they didn't tell me that when they were in college, they broke their ankle and now they have no dorsiflexion in one of their ankles, which screws everything up upstream. And me, to be a responsible strength and conditioning coach, I've done a functional movement screen and they've scored an 11 out of 21. Well, that tells me, okay, we need to work on some corrective exercises and fixing this before I have any business going into training. And a lot of people don't start with a screen, so they go right into training, and they wonder why the training is injuring them. So anytime that somebody says, hey, Timmy, can you refer, I live in Portland, Oregon, can you refer me to somebody? I always say you need to see somebody that's certified functional movement screen and preferably PRI, the Postural Restoration Institute, which is the two ways that strength coaches kind of become somewhat physical therapists, kind of understanding the prehab side of things. So let's say that we just can't squat or we score low on the functional movement screen. What does it look like? What strategies do we have to get in better positions? Because we say, okay, we need more mobility. So do I just do a bunch of active joint mobility drills, or am I going to add a little bit of static stretching, foam rolling, tissue work, manipulation, PRI? So first thing I would tell somebody is let's go after the tissue. Let's get on the foam roller and see where your trigger points are and take notes of that. And that's module 1, self-myofascial release. And then not everybody needs to static stretch, but there's going to be a need for tissue length in certain places. And then add that together with joint mobility drills. And that's kind of the traditional approach. You're playing with PRI, which I think everybody would appreciate just a little bit of, tell us what's going on with PRI, because I think that that's something that can really help when it comes to correcting dysfunction.
So PRI is the Postural Restoration Institute. It's both a method of strength and conditioning training, physical therapy, and also like an actual physical institute that's in Nebraska, run by Ron Huruska. In PRI, we know, like I was talking about earlier, I was talking with a little bit of from a PRI perspective that there are dominant chains of muscles that are overactive in the human body that are going to force us into these specific postures that will lead to overuse injury. So what we're trying to do with PRI is turn off these dominating chains of muscles.
Like right adductor.
Yeah, like your right adductor. And especially the muscles on the left side that are going to push us to the right side in order to give us a more neutral position to start from. So what we're trying to do, this plays in very well and lays very well underneath functional performance training, because if I want to try to be getting into these joint positions and these movement postures, these squatting patterns, these lunging patterns, these hinging patterns, and I'm working with an asymmetrical skeletal structure because of all these muscles pulling me in one direction, then it's going to be very hard and not very authentic of a position to get in to begin with. So a lot of what PRI uses neurological tricks or methods in order to turn off of these dominant chains of muscle. So a lot of that comes from being able to breathe properly, which is a skill, one of the most primitive skills, one of the most fundamental skills when you're born. If you think like we do from a very neurodevelopmental perspective, a child that is born, a baby that is born, first thing that comes on is their vision. Second thing that comes on is their breathing. So your diaphragm is a very powerful muscle that gets kind of brushed under the rug because everyone is after all of this sexy movement, running, sprinting, jumping type of thing. But if you can't breathe and you have no proximal stability and everything is out of position to start with, you're working with a race car that's out of alignment, and you're doomed for failure.
It's amazing how many clients come in and I'm like, all right, we're going to do a lay on your back, put your feet up. We're going to do some diaphragm breathing to kind of get activated. And it goes right into their lungs. It just to teach an athlete how to get the air into the belly is huge. And that's what the idea of PRI2 is. Like, we're going to activate this diaphragm and get respiration going first, because respiration is so important.
And using respiration to help reposition these chains of muscles, reposition all of these, because your body is, your tissues of your body go in continuous loops, in spirals, in lines that go down the front, up the back. So an issue in my neck will actually affect an issue in my foot. This regional interdependence of the body is amazing. And having the ability to convince your brain that it is not in a threatened position, so you're not carrying this tone, this sympathetic driven, nervous, anxiety type of stress, will help you get into these positions a lot easier. Yeah.
But do you have like a little like help for athletes? It's like everybody should now be like really scared of doing the wrong thing, of doing the wrong breathing. Do you have like a tip where you can actually say like, all right, this is...
So I think the
how
first
it
tip
helps?
would be when doing planks. Planks are one of the basic drills that we all need to do. We need stability.
Yeah.
So rather than going for time, we're gonna put our hand on our belly, and we're gonna do them for breaths.
Right.
Okay,
I
and we're
think-
gonna make sure it's going into our belly rather than here.
My answer to that is just in terms of like coaching cues from a coaching perspective, which we are all coaches. We're trying to fight extension, which is what is a dominating posture for most athletes, especially ultimate players who need to be. I mean, you need, in order to play frisbee and to play any sport, you need to be upright in order to see these things. But it's a matter of not being too overextended. So if I have my rib cage as the top of, say, the eggshell of my body, the center of my body, and my pelvis as the bottom, if I'm in this cracked eggshell position, I'm lacking all of this stability in front. I want to try to get my ribs down and my pelvis tucked under, so I'm not in this type of overextended posture to begin with, and I'm more into a neutral position to start. So like Tim was saying, if I can set up in this position where the egg is closed and I have this proximal stability in a good postural position to start from, I can build off of that without any sort of worry of feeding into these bad postures, being in this overextended
So when
position.
you're on the computer, don't be in this position. When you're doing a split squat, don't be in this position. When you're doing a plank, don't be in this position. Rib cage down.
Yes,
And
ribs
this is
down.
I like to freestyle. So I go out and I get into the wind, and that's the first thing that I do to be able to airbrush the disc, and then to do a body roll, I break. So I've kind of trained myself into this position, and with doing kind of AJ and I are Beach Pro lifeguards, so we get on a paddleboard to make rescues. In order to paddle, we need to go right into here. So I have just lived in this extended position, and it's completely limited my athleticism and my breathing. So PRI has just been huge for me because, one, it's corrected my pelvis, which correcting the pelvis, believe it or not, is how you get over my Achilles injury. And the same thing with just being able to respirate better and play better ultimate.
And
So
you're going to need to extend in order to be an athlete. Like, don't get me wrong, extension, like you're saying, hip extension especially is important, but it's your ability as an athlete to both extend for performance and then be able to get out of extension for recovery. So it's a continuum. It's your ability to get all the way to one side for performance and then all the way back for normal living, normal.
I think we need to make it apparent that we're talking, because I just said ultimate's all about extension, and we have to be really good at extension. And you just said extension is bad. So here's what the difference. You're talking about extension at the spine here.
Extended posture.
I'm extending here.
So anterior. This is your pelvis is anteriorly tilted, and then your rib cage is flared out here. So you actually have like a posterior tilt of your ribs and an anterior tilt. So you're in almost like a broken position of your posture, and you want to be more neutral.
Right. So I want to be pelvis under, rib cage down.
Right.
Neutral. But then, so let's just say we're talking about spinal extension for the most part. We do need hip extension. So this is bad. This is spinal extension.
Right.
This is good. This is hip extension.
Well, now show me. Show me. This is what the issue becomes: is if there isn't the stability here, and you're lacking position of your rib cage on top of your pelvis, then you are going to get a lot of hip extension using your lumbar spine.
And how many layout photos do we see of people in this kind of position, and then they make them their profile pictures? They're like, "Yeah, I'm laying out," and they look like a piece of noodle. Like, hey, it's not a good position. When we lay out, we should be here.
Sure.
And this is why we do so many dumbbell snatches, because dumbbell snatches teach us to lock down core, pelvis, load with a hip hinge, jump, and get into this overhead position without being broken. So don't want to talk about PRI the whole time, but putting it out there, any of you guys that are becoming strength and conditioning coaches, getting into this stuff, the people that I want to listen to, FMS, PRI people, because they understand the body better. So I think that's kind of the next level when we're thinking about continuing education. We'll be right back after this commercial. Stay tuned for more Strength and Conditioning Roundtable. Welcome to MPFPT. I'm Tim Morrow, head coach at Moral Performance. Now what we've done is to break down the 8 pillars of functional performance training. These are the 8 topics or conversations that will not change. We as athletes and coaches should be consistently developing our thought process in each of these 8 pillars. These are the conversations that will guide our journey as athletes. Self-myofascial release, static stretching, glutivation and mobility, MP speed and agility warm-up, linear speed mechanics, agility, strength and power development, and conditioning. Living up to our potential as athletes requires that we not only go to the gym and go to the turf to work out, but that we understand why we're doing the things that we're doing and how all of the 8 pillars of functional performance training play together in order to create a training system. If we understand each of the 8 pillars or conversations within FPT, then we are equipped to go out and write our own programs and use these ideas in the context of our own teams, our own bodies, and with whatever resources that we have as athletes and coaches. Our priming performance warm-up package is the 4 modules that we do each time before we do our workout or we play our games. We have 2 speed and agility packages to select from. Our basic speed and agility package, our elite speed and agility development package gives you glutivation and mobility, MP speed and agility warm-up, linear speed development, agility, and conditioning. Our off-season package includes modules 3, 7, and 8. This is glutivation and mobility, strength and power development, and conditioning. We hope that you join the conversation and come with us in our journey to become the best athletes and coaches that we can become. Let's go, Nick. We need bigger biceps, baby. Bigger biceps. Curl it. Squeeze it.
Hey,
Oh,
guys,
bro.
we're on a schedule here.
That's it.
We got to get this thing done. Get back in
Commercial's
your
almost
places.
over, guys. Commercial break's over. Here we go. All right, welcome back. Hope you guys enjoyed that commercial break. So the topic for this second half is the Boracay Dragons. We're here, Boracay, one of the most beautiful islands in the world, training mecca for Beach Ultimate. And the first time I heard of Boracay was I went out to Seattle, I think it was 2012, did some camps, clinics with Seattle Riot, Seattle Sockeye. Seth Wiggins and I had dinner, and he told me, dude, you want to get into Beach Ultimate, and there's an island where people play Beach Ultimate every single day. And I'm like, Seth, no way, bro. There is no way that actually happens. And he's like, dude, he pulls up a map, this tiny little island of Boracay. He's like, there it is. So didn't think much of it, kind of thought he was full of it. And then last year, AJ and I did an MP Asia tour. Into the tour was around the time of the Boracay Open 2014. And we worked it out that after we stopped in Australia, Manila, Singapore, Bali, we came and we played the tournament. And in exchange for doing a couple clinics with the Dragons, we got a place to stay. They treated us real nice for the tournament. And that was kind of the beginning of the relationship between the Boracay Dragons and our Beach Ultimate Club team, Humiliswag. So since then, we have brought the Dragons to the U.S. So this tour was last March. We brought the Dragons to the U.S. They stayed with AJ and I, trained out of our place, ended up playing 3 tournaments on their U.S. tour, stopped in Chicago for Sandblast, stopped in Wildwood, and played our tournament, the Ocean City Beach Classic. And they did this in preparation for a big tournament coming up in March, the World Championships of Beach Ultimate in Dubai. So what we ended up doing is I moved to Boracay in November because I saw, as a strength and conditioning coach, I saw such an awesome opportunity to train this team, because the last two World Championships of Beach Ultimate in, what was it, Italy and Brazil, each four years ago, the Dragons finished second. And that's a silver medal, and the Dragons have a tremendous team going into Dubai, and we have a really interesting set of circumstances in the sense that we've got 1 month to the tournament. It's February 3rd right now, and we have about 40 athletes. They all live on this island. Housing is taken care of, food is taken care of, and the priority during every day is training. So wake up, training session in the morning, food, rest, training session in the afternoon, sometimes a training session in the evening. So when we look at all these national teams in Ultimate, you know, most of these athletes picking for these tournaments have never gone through a full-time training process. A lot of them are training on their own. They have training weekends. This is, to my knowledge, the first time in Ultimate that a team has come together with an owner, a head coach, a strength and conditioning coach, and everything taken care of from an athletic development perspective to train full-time. So me as a strength and conditioning coach, it's like, this is the coolest opportunity to really to play with strength and conditioning, because my experience up to this point has been just formal. Athletes come in after school, before class. You have clients. So what we've done is we've imported kettlebells to the island. We've got about 20 kettlebells ranging from 12 kilograms up to 28 kilograms. AJ just got here about 2 weeks ago, and I ordered via our friends at Perform Better, ordered a bunch of super bands, mini bands, lacrosse balls. So we've got everything we need to do the functional performance training. And what I would love to hear from you guys is just, what are the considerations that we need to think about, your concerns, things that that I've done that you may have done differently, or kind of advice. Because one of the rules, any strength conditioning coach that I've seen be successful is 100% open-minded, and if there's something that they surround themselves with other like-minded people that can actually bring value and help. And each of us have different experiences and different kind of things that we can bring to the table. And I'm really just talking with you guys this past week, you've given us so many ideas, and my training, how I'm going to move forward is different now thanks to you guys. So let's just talk kind of about this and where, Slump, let's start with you. Downstairs, one of your main concerns with training 6 days a week is what?
From the last 2 weeks I was here, what I've seen is that there is a whole variety of athletes. There's really good athletes, as you said. There is people that have trained themselves, that have played frisbee, that have trained other sports maybe before, that are athletes already. And then there is people in a team that have been brought into this team because they threw a frisbee really good, or because their bigger brother is in the team and they learn from him, but have never been an athlete.
So we've got athletes elite all the way down to
we have
amateur.
a really widespread variety, and so it's hard to put this amount of people, 3 teams, 50 people, through one training. And one big concern mine is that with 6 days of training, 2 sessions per day, you're going to deplete a lot of those athletes. If you have half the team that is ready for that and half the team that is not, you're going to destroy the whole team, because half of the team is tired, they don't want to train anymore, they're going to hate you. and they're gonna hate their team. They don't want to go. They don't want to progress to Dubai, and from our perspective, the main goal should be to make them ready for Dubai. This is the next goal. It's not about 2016, 17, 18. It's make them ready for Dubai, and let them be in Dubai a healthy athlete that has gained strength, that has gained injury prevention for the whole time, and that has gained the will to play at a high level.
Right. So one of the principles of strict conditioning is super compensation. That there's a curve of performance, and it's first going to start pretty stagnant, and then your performance as you train is going to go way down as your body's adapting to it, and then it's going to come way up into the super compensation phase. And we want that peak to be in Dubai. But if we are overtraining, then we're going to get lower, more and more depleted. We're going to be down here, and it may be hard to dig them out of the hole to get to that peak in Dubai. Some athletes, open division athletes that are really prepared for this kind of training, it won't be a problem. But we may have other athletes that are just, they're not ready for it. Everybody's training together, too much sun. So we need to do a nice job of monitoring athletes. And Chris had an idea as to just a simple way that we can monitor how everybody's feeling.
Well, there's subjective and objective ways to do it, and I think that if you can make some sort of questionnaire that the athletes fill out every day, asking how much sleep they're getting, what if they've been eating, what their nutrition's been like, and how their body feels on a day-to-day basis, you can at least have some sort of subjective data there to go off of. If someone always writes a 7 as their daily state of readiness, and then one day they're a 4, then maybe it's the responsible training for that athlete that day might be something a little more lower intensity. Even if on the menu for that day is like high intensity weightlifting or high intensity sprinting, plyometric type training, maybe they dial it back and they just go for a swim for an hour during the session.
Another solution is going to be splitting together. We're sitting 3 teams, mixed, open, masters. So I'm going to split the team. So in the afternoons, it's going to be 2 kettlebell training sessions, mixed and masters, and then open. Because the way that you train an open division team is going to be different than a mixed division team, because the game's very different. With open, it's probably a lot more physical, faster, higher level athletes. With mixed, it's going to be a lot more kind of dump and swing, mellow. So the energy system demands, everything's going to be different. So really need to take that into account.
I think I have a pretty unique perspective because I play with these guys, and I've played with them starting a year ago at the Boracay Open 2014. Then that was like a pretty, that was short, but still a very intense training block. I'm with the team a lot. I'm running with them a lot, talking to them off the field. That was last year, 1 year ago. Then they came to Ocean City. Again, we had a couple weeks. We trained with them, practiced with them, and I played a whole tournament against them. You played with them. Now here I am a year later, training with them again. And from last year till now, last year these guys were raw athletes, just raw. They went out, run hard, run fast, cut fast. Their speed on the sand is like no one else that I've seen, and that's their strength. But their mechanics were off, and their preparation and recovery was off. And even last year, you stayed here and like taught a couple guys like a crossover, some footwork. So they started understanding that there's more that they don't really understand about, I guess, athletics. So increasing their knowledge about footwork and proper mechanics has been huge. And I think it's great that you started it a year ago, because if we just started it 2 months ago, they would not get it by Dubai. It takes more time. So even though we're here for the winter 2014, 2015 to train, I think it started a year ago when we came here. And, the more they understand movement, the better they will get. And we'll see. That could prove to be a difference maker this
But
year.
how many athletes that you have now or did already start last year?
I would say less than 10 people all in the open team. So we've started with the bulk this year, but a couple guys got it last year.
Yeah, and that was one of the struggles with me as a strength and conditioning coach is I'm going to stay true to my philosophy no matter. I'm not going to completely dumb it down to, for beginner athletes. I'm going to make them see that this is a process. We're not, if you want to learn this stuff, you're going to be really bad at it the first day, but if you stick with it, you're eventually going to be really good at it. And that's exactly what we did, because the first time I trained those guys last year, the head coach and the owner were like, yeah, I don't think people really get it. Your training's, they kept telling me my training's too advanced. And I'm like, it's not advanced to be able to do a crossover and adduct your hip and do a toe drag. Like you guys can't do it, but it's going to take time. And that's a lot of the reason I moved here in November. I got those relationships with the coaches. And before the Boracay Open, I had 10 full days with the team, wherever I had 2 weeks and I went linear day, lateral day, linear day, lateral, linear. So I was able to give them lessons and give them reps. And it's just, 10 days in a row, pretty incredible. Even look at kind of, I did 2 seasons with Ironside, Iron Squad. Really, I only had those guys when they came to the gym, and on Wednesday nights, I had the whole team together to do for 3 hours to do what I now get to do for an hour to an hour and a half every single morning. So I was able to get through some really good progressions. And now it's like, look at these guys cutting. You're seeing the crossovers, you're seeing everything, you're seeing more hip extension. They're getting it now. And it's just really, it's exciting because it was kind of a battle, because also with the strength and conditioning on the island, they say that Europe in terms of strength and conditioning is like a year behind the US. And then the further that you go, now we're in the Philippines, I'd say 2 and 3 years behind, because every gym here is a bodybuilding gym full of machines and bodybuilders, and you kind of become who you're around. There was no kettlebells on this whole island. We had to import them, which was a huge undertaking. But what the Dragons were doing for training in the past was, I'm not kidding, traditional bodybuilding. We're going to get on a Smith machine behind the neck and press through partial range of motion and then strip off weights. So if you don't come out of the gym all swole, then you haven't done it right. So it's been my job to completely shift the paradigm with these coaches and be like, okay, that's bodybuilding training. We're training athletes, and here's it's been a struggle, but we've got everything we need, and now we've got the whole team here. We can go kind of full steam ahead. So 6 days a week coming up. Let's talk about exercise selection. So keeping it simple. Nick, strength and conditioning, you love resistance training, strength training. What are kind of the exercises that we're doing and why?
Right. So it all comes back to our needs analysis. We're very familiar with the sport of ultimate, and we know how to get the training adaptations we want through various methods. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but when we look at the energy systems and the movement qualities and the athletic skills we want to develop for these players, it comes down to hip extension, our hinge, posterior chain, and on beach especially, you need a lot of concentric force going into the ground. There's less of that stress reflex you'll find on harder surfaces like you would in grass.
That's the plyometric
right?
effect, yeah.
So we really have to help them develop their pushing ability. And I think the bread and butter for these guys, given their starting points, their training age is relatively little in our traditional methods, goblet squats, RFEs, SLDLs, are the basic fundamental loaded patterns. So
And swings.
and swings. There you go.
Yeah. So one great point that Nick brought up is that the beach is very different than hard surfaces, and our training should reflect that. So when my foot hits the ground on a hard surface, I very quickly the hard surface gives force back. So it's a quick eccentric to amortization phase to concentric. So it's pop, pop, pop. That's why guys like Josh Cricket Marquette loves field ultimate, but he doesn't like the beach because he's a very elastic pop, pop. I'm the cricket, like a frog. Versus an athlete that just may have very powerful hip extensor muscles and not that plyometric effect. So when you're on sand, the force is dissipated, and that first action of the heel cords, this elasticity, doesn't come into play. This is bypassed, and now it's the hip extensor muscles that are responsible for moving the athlete forward. So we want to think a lot about hip extensors, glutes, hamstrings, and that's why we've selected these exercises. Cool. So some other concerns. What lots of things to consider here. We've talked about strength and power. Wendell, the head coach, does a great job with the SST side of things. What about energy system development? Thinking about conditioning and how to get these guys to peak in terms. What should we be thinking about there?
I think before I talk about that, well, if you're saying how Wendell, all the specific training, the tactical stuff that they do day in and day out here, I think that is always, like you were saying earlier, is one end of the continuum, one end of the spectrum for that. So all of the training that you're going to be able to offer these guys is going to be very general in nature, very foundational. So being movement quality first, like we said, and then adding like the loaded patterns that we're talking about, the knee dominated movements and hip dominated movements, because you have to remember that we're also getting extension. But one thing that I've noticed playing beach tournaments over the last few years is you need to have very strong hip flexors to be able to get your legs and your feet up and out of the sand. If you'll notice, a lot of the best players have this very dynamic and very explosive hip separation in front, because you can only really extend as far as you can flex on the other side. It's a reciprocal motion. You'll see guys firing their knees up into the air after they extend their hips over and over again, so you can get out of the sand, because it's like almost like sticking into the mud over and over again.
And we call that thigh separation.
Sure.
Yeah. Flexion on the front side, active psoas rectus, and extension on the back side, active hamstrings, adductors, glutes.
Right, and like we were saying, the reciprocal or the side-to-side motion of the pelvis that comes into play, you need to be able to stabilize the pelvis by having one side go into flexion while the other extends. If we're always extending on both sides, the pelvis that is getting into this dumped forward position and leading us to this overextended posture is just going to overuse until something's going to break down.
So a great movement for that we add into our warm-ups is a Cook hip lift.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or even like our positional holds on the wall or with a partner, getting that sort of static hip separation, thigh separation first before we add dynamic movement to it. Right. But we were talking about energy systems, right?
Right. Well, we can move on to energy systems because there's a lot to talk about in that.
You brought up the good point about how masters and mixed and open are all they're almost like different beach ultimate sports because of when you look at the needs analysis and you look at videotape and see how much actual work is going into each point. A team that is going to be mixed and might have less quality of throwers or not as good of throwers, they're going to lead to more turnovers and will have extended amounts of play time. So that you're looking at developing energy system qualities that are going to be longer in duration, more aerobic for the most part. When you have explosive athletes who are dealing with these very short alactic type of intervals that are going to be sub 10 seconds, so you sprint really fast, make 2 cuts, and then reset to the break side, and then make 2 more cuts, and then reset to the break side. You're not really putting in these long efforts of duration for work, and you have this like intermittent resting periods, so you can be more explosive with the training for those groups and shift to the longer duration for the other ones.
More explosive, it just made me think about the game of beach ultimate compared to grass. Beach ultimate being a smaller field and on the beach, a soft ground, I think creates a more explosive sport. It's like for big guys like us, we're huge on a smaller field. Then when you can not have to worry about laying out onto a hard ground constantly, we're always laying out for discs, going for Ds, because we're fearless on the beach. You're not gonna really take a hard punishment because of the hard ground.
Right.
So I think beach ultimate, we can just purely focus on developing that explosiveness. You still have tournament format, but like we just played a 3-day tournament at the Boracay Open. And Worlds is going to be at minimum 5-day tournament. So developing that explosiveness over a weekend, it's going to require some fine tuning. I don't know what the right way is, but we're seeking to find that right way.
Yeah. And so our competition does not have the resources we have. Like Dubai is a 5-day tournament. It's very hot. We're getting used to training over that. So we have a high volume of training in the hot sun. So that's one of our competitive advantages. Our competition, I mean, who are the best teams coming out of Europe? We've got Team Portugal mixed. I know it's going to be awesome because Team Portugal is not sending an open team. Pedro Vargas, David, Ricardo. Team USA open division is obviously has a lot of. They did it a little different. Last selection, it was like some players you hadn't heard of, and they kind of. I don't know how they selected it, but this time the selection was just like I talked to Mario, and he said we're taking like captains or like the best statistics player of the best club teams in the world. I mean, so David Cranston, Goose Helton, Rio, your Breeze boy, Tyler DiGirolamo, just tremendous competitors. So Team USA, I also know is doing Goose's programming, so they're going to come in very fast and explosive, but they're not training in the hot sun every day. Dubai is going to be a very hot tournament, and Goose and I are very close. He's one of the partners of Moral Performance. He's somebody that we're going to be working with a lot in the future, and he was emailing me, how do we do these things? I'm like, dude, at first I can't train Team USA. Like, don't say that the title of this email is Team USA training, because he did. I'm like, I'm going to help you and give you some ideas, but I did tell some basic ideas for Team USA so we know what they're doing. Is they need to be doing knee dominant conditioning style stuff, so stair steppers and aerodynes and stuff that's really going to prepare and condition their quads and glutes, rather than just kind of stuff where you're in this kind of position and conditioning that. So aerodynes, stair steppers, and then I was like, dude, you guys got to get in a sauna as well, just to kind of get used to that. And that was the end of. I told Goose, I'm like, I can't, no more. I'm 100% Dragons, because it's tough. I mean, it happened with Ironside too. Like, I had worked with Seattle Sockeye, and then I'm on the sidelines with Ironside. I'm like, I'm way more developed in this team than that team. So, do you guys know any other teams that we should be on the lookout for?
Team Germany, I know a lot of people, and they bring out a lot of teams, but they have a huge disadvantage. The training camps last week that I saw and that I've been talking to people, they train in the snow.
For Dubai.
We have so much snow.
Snow's deep.
Especially
knees up.
Yeah. I mean, if you do deep snow training, it's maybe similar to sand, but there is no way that
snow settles.
Yeah.
Chuck's famous for.
There is no way that you can train your energy development with like 50 degrees Celsius difference. It's like just not possible.
Good. And we've got a Humiliswag practice player, Jordan Q, who's playing for Team Qatar, and we've got another Humiliswag practice player, Mike Malloy, who's playing for Team Kenya. So we're going to see a lot of Humiliswag athletes at the tournament. So let's take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to finish this thing up with a little bit of talk about Humiliswag and what we got going and what you guys can expect in the future for Moral Performance. Outtakes. Welcome back to the Strength and Conditioning Roundtable. Hope you guys enjoyed that commercial break on MP Agility, the IFP, OFP progressions, which you guys should all know. If you don't know what that means, grab MP Agility and roll with us. We got to speak a common language, and that's the start. So, wanted to finish by talking about what is awesome that's going to be coming up outside of Dubai, because Dubai is our big peak, but it's the beginning of 2015. Lots of cool stuff going on. So we've got some great writers here that are contributing to the Moral Performance blog. That's the free content for you guys. So I think our first blog post was AJ, and you wrote about.
I basically wrote a general pitch or explanation of what FPT is and why it's going to help Ultimate Flippers. It really is like a full systems approach, mobility, active warm-up, flexibility, SMR, so like preparation and maintenance, along with agility progressions, sprinting and speed agility, and linear and lateral motion. So I just wanted to, again, I think I offer the player's perspective. I just wanted to kind of share a little bit about how the training has helped me, and it brought me from an okay college player to a pro league, and now I'm playing my first Worlds tournament, and it just works. It's awesome.
Yeah,
but it's big. It's full. It's a full system. It's like a lifestyle change.
And you try to make people realize that, like, you guys, if you'll see the pie chart, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 modules, and you don't just do one of the modules. Like, they all go together. Like, when we warm up, we're gonna do module 1. Staff myofascial release the tissue density, and then we're going to do module 2, 4-way hip, we're going to static stretch. Then we're going to be in better positions for our module 3, mobility, glutivation. Then we're going to get on the line, and we're going to do our cone-to-cone stuff. 1 through 4 go together, and then if you do those 4 as your warm-up, if you can make that part of your lifestyle, then your 5 and 6, linear speed and agility, are going to be more efficient, and then you add strength and power on top of that with module 7, and then you add conditioning on top of all that with module 8. They all go together.
And one thing that I've kind of been thinking about a few times during this discussion is, just like when you start to learn Ultimate for the very first time, you can't throw a perfect forehand, but you see it and you're like, that's awesome. I want to learn how to do that. I know I'm going to. But you're overwhelmed with Ultimate. You don't know everything, but there's more to learn. You learn a couple things. You learn a couple stretches for FPT or a warm-up strategy. Everything, like, it builds long-term, but you also, a few things will give you instant results. And so once you start getting into FPT, you you don't understand everything, but you just get hooked and you want to learn more because it helps you. Right?
It's a journey. It's a lifestyle. Yeah, good. Nick's was on.
Mine was on the 4 components of the warm-up, how to structure and apply a lot of the lessons that are spread out throughout the FPT product, and a little bit of like examples on how to structure it, how to lead it, how to make it work together
for a team.
So yes,
I really like
the
that.
athletic portion, not skills. So like drills and skills, that's a whole new thing. But how to start your warm-up, how to go step by step through it. Leading back a lot to the FPT principles.
Because it's very different warming up a whole team when you've got 30 athletes on the line than it is saying, hey, you're my one-on-one client. Absolutely. And I'm going to warm you up. You know? Yeah, and that was a great post. I remember we have some good. You did some coaching at the Cut Camp.
Yeah.
Which shout out to Java and Cut Camp, really growing. There's I think they just announced one in North Carolina, another in San Francisco. And I know that you wrote about a lot of stuff that you're teaching at the camp.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, good. Chris wrote about what lies beneath FPT.
Yeah, which hasn't actually been released on the blog yet. Right?
I just did the rough draft.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what that is it gives a perspective of where all of this comes from, because you have the finalized product, but like why do you need to do 4-way hip stretches? Why do you need to activate your glutes and your retraction and depression muscles of your upper body, like your scapulas? Like why do you need stability in some areas, and why does your training focus need to be mobility in other areas? And a lot of that is based out of what Tim and I and the rest of us believe in terms of functional movement, the functional movement system that is based out of several different principle-based approaches, like the joint-by-joint approach to training, which states that the body is a series of stacked, mobile, and stable segments. These segments their training needs are either mobility-based or stability-based. So, like, for an example, your ankle needs to be mobile in plantar flexion and dorsiflexion, so that you do not have an issue that's going to lead either downstream to your foot or upstream to your knee. And your hips need to be mobile, so that we can get into these positions for better hip extension and lateral movement from side to side, frontal plane, sagittal plane, rotational. And then
So that's why our drills, we do ankle mobility drills and we do hip mobility drills, but we don't do knee mobility drills because the knee is a hinge joint.
And it needs to be a stable segment.
Yeah.
You need to have as much stability. You need to have control of that joint in the presence of change. That's really what stability is. So if I am landing in a position and I'm decelerating like we were talking about earlier, I need to have the stability at my knee, the mobility at my hip to get into a proper position to absorb force in a good joint position, and the stability at my knee with the surrounding musculature both at the knee and downstream and upstream to stabilize the joint, so I'm not relying on ligamentous or bony structures and just breaking ACLs, which is a ligament, which is a bone-to-bone connection that's kind of holding my knee in position. Not really active structures that are muscular, but more of the passive structures.
Nice. Guys, this summer we've got some cool things going on in Ocean City. We see Boracay and Ocean City kind of becoming training destinations because AJ and I firmly believe that you're healthier when you're barefoot and in contact with the ocean. I mean, we know they sell earthing mats that for $500 that do the same thing as walking around barefoot on the beach. So we believe to achieve a lifestyle of peak performance, we need to be in the water, using the water as recovery, and the salt water, the cold, to help recover, and just barefoot in the sunlight. So we're here in Boracay now, but in the summer, our training destination is Ocean City, and we want to invite you guys. We've got a tournament. What's the dates we're going with?
Tentatively August 8th and 9th in Ocean City, Maryland, the Ocean City Beach Classic.
And we're looking to set up the MP gym in that area, whether it's we get it going by the beginning of the summer or at some point that's where it's going to be. And we invite you guys to come train with us. We've also got a lot of cool blog posts coming and a couple new products in the works. We know that a lot of you guys love the FPT approach of teach a man how to fish. You love to study, educate yourself. You crave that knowledge. But we also understand that some of you guys really want a program. So that's something that we want to be able to eventually bring to the community through Moral Performance. So hope you guys enjoyed this first episode of the Strength Conditioning Roundtable. We'd like to in the future have just specific topics that we talk about. I mean, we could talk about the whole time PRI or energy system development. So guys, put in the comments things that you guys would like to see us talk about. I think the next episode may do one in Boracay. We may do one, wait till we're in Ocean City. Mr. Charlie Foxtrot Films behind the camera. Guys, will you do this again with me sometime?
Anytime.
Yeah, cool. I think we crushed it. Nice work. Anything to say to the Ultimate community?
Don't do CrossFit.
JFP.
We'll see you guys soon. Like, share, tweet.